at Wizards of the Coast. And Daniel Jellin, who's the Senior Art Director on Dungeons & Dragons. So not only are we going to be talking about how we bring a campaign to life and how you're going to be able to experience it in the free-to-play MMO when it launches, we're also going to talk a little bit about the Foundry. Everyone who knows Neverwinter knows it's all about player content. And you can't have an online Neverwinter game without some form of that. So we'll be talking about the Foundry, where you're going to be able to bring your own campaigns, your own dungeons, and your own stories to life for players to experience. We're also going to be doing a Q&A. I'll announce when to start lining up for that, and then we will be doing the raffle and giving away the t-shirts at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Randy, who's going to start us off.
Thanks a lot. My name is Randy Mossens. I am a senior designer over at Cryptic Studios. I've been there for about 7 years now. Started with City of Heroes, Champions Online, and now Neverwinter. So I've been playing D&D on and off since the mid-'80s. Started with D&D Red Box Edition, 3rd Edition, 4th Edition, playing around with D&D next. Yeah, good stuff. So we want to start off with a little bit about the design philosophy, because what we really want to do is not do a literal translation of the rule set to the video game medium. We want to take the essence of D&D and make it fit our action video game medium fairly well. So when we talk about the essence of D&D, there's different things you can do when you play D&D, right? You explore like amazing different types of environments. You slay all types of horrible monsters, and you find amazing treasures, right? And it's kind of like what you do in pretty much every D&D game session. Right? It's you get together with friends, and the important thing of tying it all together in both the tabletop and the online video game medium is that it's a very social experience. You get together with your friends, roll some dice, or get together at your computers, work together against a common enemy. And as part of part of that, we also want to make sure that both as you're DMing, dungeon mastering, you're describing all kinds of environments, like very strongly themed environments. And in video game medium, we have to show that a lot more. So just like in other video games, you have like a fire level, ice level, etc. We want to translate the D&D environments to that video game medium. And at this point, like we work with Wizards on a lot of this translation, and they're the ones who actually really push the idea that, okay, we just want to get the essence of D&D. We don't want to say we're using this specific rule set, right? And I could try to kind of talk a bit about that more. I'd like to introduce Chris Young from Wizards of the Coast.
My name is Chris. I've worked on Wizards on Dungeons & Dragons for the better part of 13 years. I've done everything there from design and editing work to being editor-in-chief of Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine. Shout out to Dungeon. So I've been neck deep in this. Oh, hey, that's awesome. Thanks, Joe. And the owlbear is my least favorite monster of all time. Yeah, speaking a little bit more to what Randy was talking about, it is really important to us that Dungeons & Dragons be represented well in the digital space. And we spent a lot of time talking with Cryptic about what really makes a Dungeons & Dragons video game experience a Dungeons & Dragons experience as opposed to some other fantasy RPG experience. And we don't think that and that really breaks down into two things, right? It breaks down into your mechanics, and it breaks down into your story. And we don't really think that means that you have to have a grid in your game, for example, or you have to have characters only get a standard action and a move action, or there's a turn-based gameplay. I think those are really great, can be really great D&D experiences. They can be really great D&D digital experiences. But when you're talking about an action-adventure MMO, not so much, right? So, we talked a lot about, fighters feeling like fighters, right? They need to look and they need to feel to the player like a fighter should in a Dungeons & Dragons experience. It means, they aren't, openly wielding magic, for example, and they're wearing heavy armor. Rogues feel like rogues. They're nimble and they're agile and they're sneaking up on their enemies and dealing lots of damage. And wizards are casting magic missile. And those are the things that really make a Dungeons and Dragons experience sing. And the monsters as well. Like Joe and the art team have done a fantastic job of realizing these monsters. And you'll see that in this game they look like D&D monsters, right? But interpreted for the game properly, and interpreted to make them fit this action adventure.
Thanks. So we've been working back and forth with Wizards of the Coast on a lot of these discussions about what these teams do. I want to touch a little bit more on the conception phase, where we actually start discussing, when we're actually translating a source material into a video game design level. We actually go straight to the source material. There's a ton of D&D books to draw upon, like decades and decades of source material to draw upon. Of course, we've been drawing a lot on the Front Realms books, Monster Manual, the R.A. Salvatore books, and of course the Neverwinter campaign guide coming up this last year. And it provides us with ideas going forward that for both design and art. And when we're designing a zone, once we get the draw from the source material, we work on a story outline about what the zone is about, what kind of creatures, what kind of quest givers and NPCs, what kind of treasures that are themed based on the zone we're designing. And it provides us with a framework that is going for, like, what kind of quests, what kind of environment requirements for it. And we want to pick out distinctive elements that give an environment a look and feel. Like, for example, currently in Neverwinter we have like the Tower District, which is a war-torn city that's overrun by orcs. That's kind of the key one-liner for the zone. We have Up and Downs, which is a new environment, and we're working with the wizards to expand some of the environments in the Front Realms world around the Sword Coast. Which is Up and Downs is a spooky, undead haunted swamp. And one line just gives you that visual. Velost, which is a savage barbarian wilderness filled with the gray wolf with guard barbarians. And when you come up with these basic ideas, we come up with a short story structure, and then we propose a pitch to Wizards of the Coast for buy-off and discussion on what we can do. Sometimes they come up with ideas for that, and that's where we go over, and Chris can tell you a little more about the pitch process.
Yeah, and before I do that, to give a little context to the Neverwinter campaign guide and our other physical products for the tabletop RPG. With Neverwinter especially, our design team really wanted to give players of our tabletop game a product that wasn't so much telling people, here's what Neverwinter is, here's everything that's happening there, this is the way it has to be in your home game for your tabletop experience. They really wanted to give people a lot of seeds and ideas so that DMs could sort of fill in the gaps themselves. So they give a lot of inspirational nuggets of story information and lore information about factions and villains and monsters and locations. And the design team at Cryptic has really taken this idea that we really intended for the tabletop RPG audience and really run with it with the game. The pitch process really sounds a lot like a DM coming to us with an idea for a tabletop adventure, right? They say, this is the location that we really like to feature, and these are the villains, and these are the monsters. This is the sort of loot that we want to include. These are the sort of the beats that we want to hit. And it really has worked well, and it's been a very sort of familiar process to us in many ways, and it's been also a new process to us. And the other great thing is that the Neverwinter environs, we deliberately left a lot of blank space there for DMs at home to work with and to sort of add new points of interest to themselves as they saw fit for their campaigns. And Cryptic has done the exact same thing, and they've embedded that using our lore and using Forgotten Realms information so that it feels like Forgotten Realms lore that's been there for years, even if it's something that's brand new. So when we get a pitch from these guys, Randy or Zeke or someone will contact us and say, this is the idea we want to give. Here's sort of our high level. We run that through our story team, we run that through our design team, it goes through my digital team. We go around and we talk about it internally, we talk about it with Dan and the art guys. I mean, it's a sort of a pretty thorough review, and we send back some ideas and some pitches, and then they come back to us. And we have this great dialogue that sort of happens, and we discuss things, and it really sounds like a bunch of D&D nerds sitting around a table talking about their next campaign. I mean, that's really what it's like. And then we eventually reach a consensus, and there are as many lore threads and Forgotten Realms threads. If you're Forgotten Realms fans, when you play this game, there's nuggets of information buried in there everywhere that just really make this feel like a Forgotten Realms D&D experience. And then we come to a consensus, and they start generating work at that point. So it's worked really well.
Yeah, and the back and forth goes on for a bit, and once we have the approved kind of story outline and the basic idea for a zone, we start building on our zone framework, right? And zone framework is really go back to it's like a dungeon master making with the grid maps, right? You start and actually have a grid map at work that has a bunch of these sketches for things that you'll eventually see in the player game. And but you take the different elements from the source material, and we start kind of doing paper mock-ups, right? Saying which areas we want to use, which we convert into actual environmental gameplay space, and we start using. We have a zone map which shows persistent world, and then instances that which go off and say, okay, this part of the city goes off into sewers. This part goes into an orc stronghold. This part goes into the actual main dungeon, and we actually define areas that we have different events and contests that go on in the areas. Again, bringing the kind of the social experience back into the game. Once we've got signed off on this internally, and again, we're looking for iteration back and forth between wizards, we start generating our asset lists, right? It's like we need these types of environmental assets and character assets, everything. And this is where we toss everything over to art, right? And introducing Joe J, our the environment artist, or the artist, I should say, over at Cryptic Studios, who takes all our stuff and says, no, we can only have half of this.
So, hi everybody, I'm Joe J. It's a roving mauler, and some of you may already know that. We theme developer guys with D&D monsters. So I've been making video games since 1998. I was lead game designer on Blood Rain. Not so highlight, I worked for 3.5 years on Duke Nukem Forever. But I'm working on a highlight right now with Cryptic and Neverwinter. Been here about 4 years. I manage a team of artists. There are about 25. We've got environment, characters, effects, animation, UI. For this discussion, I'm going to talk just about the environments and characters. But it's a very collaborative and iterative process and team, and we very much consider Wizards of the Coast part of that team. And we have weekly phone conferences with them. We are constantly checking in with them, making sure that we're doing what they envision Dungeons and Dragons, and of course syncing that with what we think of as Dungeons and Dragons. So of course, starting off with Dungeons and Dragons, one of the biggest things, of course, is monsters. And we go right to the source, we go to the monster manuals, and we pull out all kinds of information from that, of course, like with the different class types and all of the details, like even a lot of the backgrounds and physiology of some of these critters. I'm going to talk a little bit about a staple, which is the kobolds. And so when we decide to do a group like the kobolds, design gives us specific requests on which ones they want. Typically, it's 5 different types. You have minions, rogue, archer, wizard, and fighter, and almost any monster kind of fits within that. So for the kobolds, you have the Slyblade, which is essentially a rogue. You have the Hurler, which is essentially an archer. You have the Worm Priest, which is essentially a wizard. This does is it boils it down to very simple, common terms that we can pass on to the artists so that they can translate that into the game format very easily. That said, our first pass in the game isn't always great. All of these characters, it's actually really hard to tell who the minion is and who the hurler is, who the Slyblade is. They're all very dark too, which is that's a no-no with making video games. You want to make sure that the stuff is very easy to read. And so we need to make distinct characters. We want to match the source as much as possible, but we also need to ensure that you can read it very easily in the game. And so we go through a number of revisions, and we look at this in game, and now you can like instantly tell a minion, you can instantly tell the rogue, you can instantly tell the spellcaster, and it still is true in essence and feeling to the original source material. And then this is where we will typically interact with Wizards of the Coast again and get feedback. And one of those things, which huge history of Dungeons & Dragons, there's a lot of art out there for kobolds. Some have kind of green skin, which is what we did those first passes on. Some actually have more rust color, and the documentation actually says rust color. And that's where we get the feedback from WotC, like, yeah, we need to make this rust color, and we're trying to unify this. And we, of course, test this in game and make sure that it's all readable. But that interaction between Wizards of the Coast and what we're doing is an attempt to, of course, keep true to the materials that everybody knows and loves, but also make it work in the game environment.